Now, for the rest of the lesson, what we'll talk about are the scope and audience together. We're going to talk about these at the same time. So let's say I want to write a technical article. I'm going to write a technical article about fishing. So I need to think about the scope, right? I need to think about the information I should cover. I'm also going to think about the audience at the same time. So what information should I cover? What are the things I need to think about when I'm thinking about the scope? For fishing, I need to think about the genre. Okay, are we talking about fishing in a pond, a lake, a river, in the surf, in the deep sea? Are we talking about fly fishing or lure fishing or bait fishing? Then we also need to think about things like topics. What is the topic I'm going to write about? I could write about new products, new concepts. It could be a buyer's guide. It could be a how-to. It could be a person profile. It could be about a place to go or an event, or it could be a review or a comparison. Then I also should think about different elements of fishing. So there are things like the weather or the tides and how they affect how you would go about fishing. We could talk about techniques, different gear makes and models, components, clothing, accessories, safety, or technology. We also need to think about the audience. Who are we writing for? Are we writing for a beginner, somebody who occasionally fishes, for an enthusiast or an expert or even a professional? Somebody that's a gearhead. Is this a local? Is it a tourist? And other things that we need to consider. Is there a word count limit? Can I include figures and tables? What about legal considerations? What are the guidelines for writing this article? When is the deadline for it? What's the budget? How much can I spend when I'm writing this article? And what is the reach? Is it going into a publication that will go out to 100 people? Or is it going on the internet where anyone can see it? Or is it going in a publication with a circulation of 100,000 people? So there are a lot of different things to think about as you're determining the scope and the audience. Now let's look at one more example of one of these online articles about COVID-19. Now let's talk about the similarities between technical writing and other types of writing. One thing that's similar is the process. So there is still the same process of pre-writing, drafting, revising, and editing. So if you were going to write a poem or a novel or a short story, you would still follow these same steps. You would need to sit down and think about what you're going to write, do some pre-writing. You would write a draft, and then you would revise it, and you would edit that draft. So these are all very similar. Also, it's similar in that it takes time and effort. You don't just sit down and write a grant proposal or a journal article in a day. It takes a long time and it's a lot of work. Just like other types of writing, it requires strong language skills. And it requires research. So you need to research your audience, your topic, and your purpose. And it also has rules, conventions, and style. How is technical writing different from other types of writing? So one of the differences is the audience. So if you're writing a novel or a short story, you're going to have a different audience than if you're writing a scientific journal article. So the technical writing audience is usually highly specific and technologically savvy in that field. Another difference between technical writing and other forms of writing is that in technical writing, the organization is simple and it strives for clarity and readability. Another difference is that figures, tables, and illustrations are commonplace. They really help the reader understand the technical writing, so it's good to use figures and tables and such. Another difference is that the author of technical writing is a technical expert. Even if you don't feel like you're an expert, you are the technical expert because you are writing this technical article. Another difference is that even when the purpose is to persuade, the information needs to be objective, factual, accurate, unambiguous, and free from emotion or opinion. Now, we're talking about personal opinion here, not professional opinion. Another difference is that it uses highly specialized language and technical terms. And we're going to talk in later lessons about why it's important to limit your use of jargon, but even limiting technical terms to when it's absolutely necessary is something that's important for good technical writing. And the final difference between technical writing and, let's say, creative writing is that the tone is formal, specific, precise, direct, and clear. The last thing I have for you in this lesson, a checklist for technical writing. So we've already mentioned a lot of the items that I have on this checklist, but I've come up with 8 C's for technical writing that you want to make sure that you are accomplishing. The first one is that it's correct. So if your writing is not correct, if it has errors, you're going to lose all credibility with your audience. They expect everything in a technical article to be 100% correct. You also want to make sure that it's complete, that you haven't left anything out. And it's surprisingly easy to leave something out when you're an expert because everything seems obvious to you. So you really have to think back to your audience and make sure that you're not leaving something out that the audience doesn't know, that to you feels like everyone should know that. Also make sure that it's clear and concise. So when I say it's clear, what I mean is that you don't confuse the readers by saying something that can be interpreted in different ways, and it's easy to understand. By concise, what I mean is it's as short as it can possibly be while not losing any information. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's short. It just means that it's as short as it can be. Another C is cohesive. So cohesive means that the entire piece of writing is organized in a way that all of the parts fit together. You don't feel like there's something that's there that shouldn't be there, or that it's not organized well. It should also be consistent. So consistent means that there are no inconsistencies in the writing, and it means things like using key terms the same way every time, and you're not giving different information in different parts of the article. It should also be considerate, and by that I mean that you need to take your readers into account and don't make extra work for them. So write it in such a way that they don't have to go to outside sources to look up terms or to look up additional information to understand your article. And it needs to be convincing. So when they read it, you want them to agree with what you're saying. You don't want them to walk away thinking, oh, I'm not so sure about what that author said. I don't really believe what they're saying. All right, so we have arrived at the end of this lesson. I'd like to quickly go over one more time the learning outcomes. So again, they are to describe settings where technical writing is used, list and define the main considerations for technical writing, explain similarities between technical writing and other forms of writing and also the differences, and describe the purpose, scope, and audience for your written document. So go ahead and work on the worksheet for this lesson and also take the quiz. And as you do, happy writing.